Welcome to Before, During, After, a Smirk Experience podcast about performance from the inside. Every week, I'll sit down with a professional comedian to unpack how they prepare for a gig, what they're thinking about while they're on stage, and how they reflect once it's over. Because great performances don't just happen, they're built. This week's guest is Garrett Millerig, a man who spent the last 15 years performing comedy in every room imaginable. Garrett and me discuss the biggest mistake made by speakers before they get to the punchline, how audiences can smell inauthenticity and how pros mitigate this, how a disastrous gig can be your best teacher, plus the surprising similarities between comedy and cooking. Enjoy. How long have you been going in comedy, Garrett?
What year is it? 2026. I started doing stand-up in 2012. But I'd done sketch and things before that, so I don't have a kind of definitive, this was my first gig story. It was a kind of a slow, a slow journey in, I guess.
Understood.
Yeah.
What would be something about comedy that you realise, looking back, you were totally wrong about when you started?
I don't know. The things I was wrong about. I definitely didn't envisage as many service stations. That was like the travel element of it. I knew about that, but I definitely, I guess, was kind of underprepared for the level of traveling involved, and indeed the amount of time you have to dedicate to it. I think. Particularly when you're starting out, you have to dedicate all of your time, all of your thought, all of your evenings. And I guess I was probably naive about that going in, which I think a lot of people are. I was up for it. I didn't balk it. I did dedicate a huge amount of time for it. But in terms of the impact it would have on your social life, or your holidays, and all sorts of things like that, I don't think I really had calculated any of that when I started. Travel and time, I guess. I would say I was not entirely wrong about, but I think I was definitely like naive about.
Comedians talk a lot about service stations. Off the top of your head, what are your top three right now, Garrett?
I just like one with a properly franchised outlet, Sam. I don't. There's one that everybody likes on the way up to Edinburgh because it's a farm shop, and I can't stand that one. When I pull over at a service station, I want KFC, I want Burger King, I want an M&S food, I want cold familiarity.
Yes.
Not curveballs of nice fresh things. You don't know where you are with nice fresh things. It just it feels incredibly incongruous.
Yes, indeed. Garrett, you got a very distinctive comedy voice. Two questions. One, how would you describe it to someone who hasn't seen your act? And number two, was it something that you kind of consciously cultivated, or did it just appear over time?
I'm never really sure how to. I don't think I'm the best person to describe myself to others. So I don't. Whenever anyone asks me, like, you get those questions like, "What kind of comedy do you do?" I just do stand up.
Start of the Fringe, you always get those kind of things pinged at you, don't you?
Yeah, people ask. Well, I guess it's observational stuff. It's I always kind of like non-didactic comedy. Like, I find political comedy that's heavily didactic incredibly boring, and there is way too much of it. And there has been way too much of it over the last 10 years because there's sort of an expectation that that's what comedy is, or that's what comedy should be. So yeah, that's more sort of defining myself against things I'm not rather than things I am. So yeah, I'd say I do political stuff, but not in a rally cry. I like coming up with like positions on things that are unpopular, not out of any. Like I like the comedic fun of digging yourself a hole and then trying to do a backflip out of it.
Yeah.
And seeing if you can take people with you. So it's not out of, I don't do that sort of thing out of any great desire to get anyone to follow me in the ideas. You know, I like finding arguments and picking holes in them, but for fun as much as anything else, or really just for fun, actually.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned a bit about kind of swimming against the tide there. Have you ever felt any pressure to soften your opinions or change your style to fit the industry?
No, because I don't like my opinions in terms of what my opinions are as a person are, they don't necessarily always line up with the opinions that I'm putting out on stage. I would say something that I don't agree with as a position, just to, as I say, dig myself a hole to see if I can get out of it for fun. You know, it's clowning, isn't it? But no, I've not. I tend to think that you can't say anything business. I think you can. I think audiences are self-policing entities, and as long as you're having fun with something, I tend to think that you can say whatever you like. I mean, as long as you know why you're doing it. It's that thing of going. I was thinking, as long as your target and your intention are correct, you can say whatever you like.
Yeah, right. Can you think of a joke that you've ever written that you loved but audiences hated?
I can tell you a joke that I wrote that doesn't work on stage. Like it just doesn't land at all on stage. And I put it in. I think the first time I put it in were for you get those like things in Edinburgh where they say send in your best one-liners or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just sent it into one of those in 2013. I think was the first time I sent it in, and this joke that does not function. It just doesn't work on stage. The joke is I invented the self-fulfilling prophecy. It probably won't go anywhere, but still. It doesn't land in a room, but it looks quite good on paper. So I sort of sent it as one of those things, and it got published in one. And then every single time that I was asked for about 10 years for jokes for those things, I sent it in, and it's been published everywhere from like its last appearance I think was in the middle of lockdown, and it was in the Telegraph.
Okay.
But that it was sort of became a little joke to myself that I put this thing in that doesn't functionally work on stage and put it in, and it ended up in these lists. The best jokes of the you go. It's not. It just looks. It's a good joke on paper, but it just doesn't, for whatever reason, it just doesn't function in a room. Having said that, I haven't tried to get it to function in a room for 13 years, so that was just a little thing that I enjoyed.
What is the time frame of a new bit going in and you ultimately deciding, yeah, this isn't as funny as it was in my head? Are you someone who is quite ruthless? Will you try it once, or will you be like, there's something in this, I know there is?
You give it a couple of goes, or adapt it and rewrite it and stuff, but there's no point flogging a dead horse. So I tend to think you write a bunch of stuff, and it's usually like the throwaway lines and things that you put in that then it's audiences are interesting things. They will show you where the gag is. They will show you where the pressure point in what you're writing is. So when you're doing new stuff, there's reams and reams and reams of stuff that you end up having, and you jettison most of it, and then end up exploring ideas on stage that it kind of surprised you that an audience went with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is there a topic in your head that most comics don't tackle that you think they should talk about more?
No. Sorry, it's a very
no.
That's a boring. That's a boring answer. But no, I tend to think people should talk about what they want to talk about. But I think there are definitely things. I'm not really, because I'm working on a new show at the moment. not paying a huge amount of attention to what other people are doing, because it's none of my business. So,
Yeah, right.
and I haven't seen, really this year. I haven't been to see a lot of stuff in the last couple of months, so I couldn't really say, to be honest with you. But generally, I don't have views on what people should or should not be talking about.
Fair enough. When you're at a festival, are you someone that likes to watch other shows, or are you someone who doesn't?
No, I don't. I used to run a preview season in London years ago, and so I'd see a lot of things when people were working it out. But when I'm doing a show, I like to sort of keep my eye on my show rather than looking over the garden fence, because you see things afterwards. I like going to see stuff, but I tend to think, if you go and see stuff, like personally anyway, I'll be sat in a room being like, that's brilliant, I should have done something like that, and I will start analysing my own show in a way that is not helpful to me or the show.
I understand that. And that's probably what the good acts do. Part of this podcast is explaining why I never made it as a comic my own self, and maybe that's it. I'm just a punter, really, at heart. And I've been doing shows just watching other people, but I think most of the pros that I talk to are in your camp. Well, talking to your style, this is a hard question. I don't want this to be like a tossy pre-Edinburgh question.
Yeah.
Can you think of one of the most Garrett Millerick jokes you've ever written?
Well, they're all the most Garrett Millerick jokes.
I know they are. I know they are. But if there was one, is there one when you put the pen down, or when you've said it on stage places and you go, yeah, that's me, everybody?
Oh, God. No, I don't. Like, genuinely, no, I don't know. I tend not to be my own writing in that kind of way. I'm just sort of pushing forward, always trying to think of new stuff. And when I've written new stuff, I'm just a huge bag of self-doubt until such time as it's gone out and an audience has laughed at it, and then I kind of can consolidate it and work on it and be like, right, okay, so that's the best expression of me now. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. But in terms of looking back on things, or I'm not a sort of great one for sitting there writing a bunch of stuff and being like, oh, that's fantastic, I'll go and have a cup of tea now. I'm more sort of looking at going, oh, this is shite, this is absolute shite, what am I doing, and getting myself into a huge sweaty, anxious ridden panic. And then it all, it's just constantly sort of jumping out of a plane without a parachute. And I've never felt particularly smug about doing that. And even like this far into a career, you kind of go, it's always just like, oh, no. And then when something's finished and like a show's done or a routine's done or something, it takes me a kind of a period of time to get past it and be like, oh, that's good. Whereas... in the middle of it, it's more like, is it working? Not like, is it a representation of me, or is that the best thing I've ever written, or anything like that. My brain tends not to work like that.
Yeah, right. I understand. So you obviously got a lot of pals within the comedy industry, but you're, a normal human being and a dad and those types of things. So you would meet civilians quite a lot of the time who would say, what do you do for a job? And you tell them. Yeah. What do you think's the biggest myth that people outside the industry have about comedy?
Well, I don't tell them. I tell them I'm a writer, because I remember for years I didn't like going to weddings because I would get invariably, I remember I went to a series of weddings. You go through those kind of phases of your life where I'd always get sat down next to the person that whoever organising the wedding was like, oh, this is the fun guy in the office who's always wanted to try stand-up or whatever. So you end up... and I just... It's sort of an odd question. And I know this is not unique to stand-up. I think a lot of jobs have this. Like a friend of mine's a doctor, and whenever anyone finds out you're a doctor, they'll start telling you, I've got this thing with my elbow, and
Yeah, right.
and you're just like, it's not a thing. So you do get into those conversations with people going, well, I've always wanted to try stand up, and my only response to that is, well, you should. But the biggest myth, I guess, I was talking to somebody once. This is a good few years ago now, and they were being very tedious, and they wouldn't put the thing down. And that they were going, I want to try this. And I was like, well, you absolutely should. And they said, well, could you help me get gigs? And I was like, no, I'm not a booking agent. That's not what I do. And they carried on with this line, and they went down and said, well, I've always been the funny one in my group of friends. And I sort of picked up that. And I think that is a misconception. I was like, well, that doesn't matter. Because essentially what you're doing in a group of friends, you've got a group of people who have a shared experience and a shared understanding, and you're landing punchlines with that shared experience and that shared understanding. And that is not in of itself difficult. The craft of stand-up is taking a room full of strangers and giving them that shared understanding in, 30 to 60 seconds, and then landing the punchline. So I think a lot of people think it's the punchline. It's actually the craft comes in the setup,
right?
And unifying a group of strangers to have a complete shared understanding in order to all have the same, audible emotional response to the punchline.
Yeah, definitely. I do a lot of MC work now, mainly because of what you said about all of the travel. And I think quite a lot of that role is almost like herding people up into one big group. So when the comic comes on, it's easier for them to sort of take them in different directions. What you don't want in a setup is to start talking about something and some people think, oh, how sad. Or some people think, oh, that'll be funny. Or some people because then it's much harder. It's much easier if you're controlling the whole herd in one go, a bit like one man and his dog almost.
Right. Yeah. And I do think, well, you've got to kind of do that for every routine. You have to make sure that everybody understands what you're talking about. So you get those things, and I guess that is actually something that's getting harder as culture is and society is more fractured.
Yeah, right.
If you think, like, if you were doing this in the 90s, there are 4 television channels and a handful of radio stations. So to a great extent, everybody's listening and watching the same things, or at least they're aware of them now. They were aware of them then. But now, where people are getting their news from, radically different. What people are watching could be, something on YouTube or something on television. Or people talk to me about television programs and things. I've never heard of them, and they're like massive.
Yeah.
So there's so much choice, and there's the world is so big now, and that's fantastic because everyone can go and find the things that they want. But that does mean the kind of the lazy route of saying, okay, this is something that we all know about. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? When that trope's coming around, everyone would have seen or heard about it because there was a limited sphere that you were looking at, and now it's absolutely ginormous.
No, definitely. I think part of the thing about putting together a new bit with the setup is a kind of empathy with your audience. You say, if I start on this, people will think that. Therefore, I need to kind of cover that off, to sort of block that route to keep them with me. Like, I'll give you an example. Yeah. I did a thing recently in my local village gig that I run, which I love doing. And I was taking the mickey out of a Western-themed restaurant called Smith and Western that my kids love. But it's all like, howdy, partner, sit on down. And I was amazed at the number of groups of people who were there who were just all adults in their 40s, 50s and 60s. And I was thinking maybe one person on the WhatsApp group would be like, they've all got fucking cowboy hats on in there. Why don't we go to the Royal Oak just down the road, which has a lovely menu. And they're like, Steve, you just don't get it, do you? But what I had to say at the start of that was,
Mm.
oh, I know what you're thinking, that I'm some flash Harry who's come down from London and I'm just taking the mickey out of all your restaurants. That isn't true. I've been to the Rock in Chiddingstone, which I think is fantastic. And I listed a few to show that I kind of get the local cuisine, if you see what I mean,
Yeah.
to then go on to taking the piss out of adults that go to a Western themed restaurant for fun.
Yeah, you see, I wouldn't have bothered with that. I would have just gone straight in with cutting off the. I don't have that desperation to be liked.
Well, that's interesting in itself, though, isn't it? That's your. I can remember doing some lockdown shows with you, and you were talking to people about, and you know you're never going to learn a musical instrument because you've just had the last 18 months to do that, and you haven't done it still.
Yeah,
It, is that?
confronting people with their own failure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, that was the devastating thing about lockdown for a lot of people. I think you did discover you don't have a novel in you.
Right,
And
right.
you're not going to get fit. And if you were given infinite time and infinite solitude, and yeah, most people can't actually do anything with that. So it
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And people laugh at the tragedy of their own existence, basically.
yeah. What's the thing the kids say? They feel seen.
But yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
There's a whole function of this where you just go out and go. I'm a piece of shit and you're a piece of shit, and that's fine. And everyone goes, oh, okay.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah,
It's not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
it. So when you're start say
Mm.
something dawns on you like that, like you didn't do anything with your solitude worthwhile. You just watched the fucking Tiger King or
Mm.
whatever it was that people were doing.
Yeah.
Did you start off with a premise that you then kind of plug into your own Garrett militarization of the world? Is that what you're? How does that work?
Well, my Garrett militarization of the world is just that's just my brain. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't do it in a conscious I don't do it in a conscious way. But yeah, I'll see something, I'll write an iPhone note about it, or I'll be talking to someone about something, and something will start firing, and then I'll just go and unload on that topic on a piece of paper, and then and then go and see if it gets a reaction from an audience, and then depending on what that reaction is initially, and as I said earlier, which the audience will show you, they'll guide you the way when you're doing new material nights about what things are. Like a lot of times I do when I do previews and things, because I'm quite a big performer and I can sell stuff through dint of theatricality. I will sit on a stool and I will have notes on a music stand, and I'll do a very low energy run of stuff to see where it gets, like where the ideas are getting responses, before I then go, okay, how am I going to perform this? What's the best way to take this material and get the maximum out of it? You kind of, when you're looking at the raw ingredients, you're going to test the quality of the ingredients just on a basic taste test before turning the whole thing into a meal, I guess would be.
Yeah, nice, man. Nice. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Well, food analogies are absolutely they're great for stand up. I think stand up is the most similar thing to chefing that exists. When people go, oh, what's it? It's like it's like it is chefing essentially. What you're doing is you're taking ingredients that are available to everyone, and you're trying to put them together in a completely unique way, and you're doing that in order to satisfy a paying customer.
Nice. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So all of these things exist for everybody, but what you're doing is saying I can put those together on a plate that's going to blow your mind.
And you've got some ingredients that you would use more than others. Some you might just need a little sprinkle or a pinch.
Yeah,
Others,
yeah,
others you can kind of
yeah. And like
put in a bit more.
like chefing, I mean, there's this lie about comedy that it's subjective. It isn't. It's objective, and the objectivity is whether or not people are laughing.
Hmm.
And there's this other lie that's told about it that it's an art form. It is, but only at the top level. But below that, much like cooking, it's a craft. So whether or not Anthony Bourdain is a better chef than Marco P.R. White is a subjective opinion. But right at the top, whether or not that egg is cooked is not a subjective opinion.
Yeah.
And comedy is exactly the same. So people come down and they'll look at something where the egg's not cooked, and they'll go, "Oh, but it's subjective." And you go, "It isn't." You're only actually comedy's very simple because you're looking for one response, and it's binary. So if you get the response, then it has succeeded. If you do not, it has failed. So turning around, and go, "Well, they weren't my audience," or blah blah blah. It's like, well, you should have other things to throw at that. You should be able to. Not entirely just say, "Oh well, it's them." I think there's that bit in that Jerry Seinfeld film, Comedian, where he says, people go, "Oh, it's this, it's that," and he says, "It's not, it's you, it's always you." And that's a very hard thing to for a performer, because you're the one on stage and you've had to take the emotional brickbat of silence, but you got to take that emotional brickbat of silence as an instruction to do something else. And walking off and just being like, "Oh well, it's subjective." You go, "It isn't. It's subjective, and you failed. So go away and have another look."
Quite. How much do you, how many different gears have you got to go through depending on the audience? If it's a room full of stag and hen do's
Mm.
versus, I don't know, a women's institute that have booked you. You might say they
Yeah.
wouldn't book you, but let's say for the sake of argument.
No, I do. I mean, I get booked to MC, and I have a different gear for MCing because it's you can't really be confrontational as an MC
Yeah, right.
without possibly ruining the pitch for everyone else. So
Hmm.
yeah, I've got different speeds. I mean, I tend not to do that many bear pits anymore, but I did my time at that, and I had sets for stag do's or military stuff or boisterous things. I mean, I did a gig on Friday night that was at like an arts festival in a stately home in a Spiegel tent, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do slightly gentler stuff here, and I went into something, and um, they didn't wholeheartedly go for the gentler stuff. So I thought, well, I'll try a bit harder, and then I went harder, and they really liked the harder stuff. So it's possible to misjudge these things with walking in a room and saying, oh, these people aren't going to want this, but then being able to change the gear is is a good place to be, I'd say.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And yeah, it's absolutely spot on that we're all guilty of prejudgments, aren't we? Looking at a room, and it goes both ways. Sometimes you think, oh, I don't really think that they're going to like this, and they love it. And other times you think they are going to build a statue of me outside this place when this gig is over. And for whatever reason, it doesn't live up to expectation. So I suppose trying to keep an open mind.
Yeah, you mean you can misjudge rooms and you can misjudge audiences. I remember years ago going into a place on a Saturday night, and I had actually done a run of bear pits in the 2 weeks before, and walked in. I thought, oh my god, this is going to be, because in the front row you had these really these sort of really hench ball guys who just looked they were going to be like EDL people or something, you know.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, this is going to be a struggle. And he was watching the section with the MC. It turned out they were nuclear physicists. So
there you are. Bloody nuclear physicists getting everywhere.
Yeah. So yeah, you can misjudge it, but being able to in the moment change tack is an important thing to be able to do, I think.
Yeah, very much so.
That loud, you know, the first time I did the loud aggressive thing was actually a gig in Exeter that was just a complete. I mean, it was a borderline riot, and I was quite new, and I was looking at the back of the room, and I just thought, I just don't know how I'm going to do this, and I think I was quite sort of scared of them, which was a reasonable response, as it was feral. So I just decided I was then delivered material, and at this point I think I'd been going for, I don't know, about 6-7 months or something, and I just decided I would deliver my material at like 200 miles an hour, and loud and aggressive, and I would dominate them, and I did, and it went well, and I came off and I was like, okay, well that's a gear I didn't know I had, all right, and then you sort of be like, okay, well I'm going to play with that toolkit for a bit, and you know, the first time I did, there wasn't a huge amount of nuance in it, and I'd say it was probably it was a reaction to being inexperienced and very, I guess scared of the room, and it, but that then opened up this whole other toolkit and this fun area to explore. From that experience, so yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, brilliant. I'd like to come back to that a little bit later on, if that's okay.
Sure.
But for now, let's talk about how your kind of pre-show routine now. Are you someone who still gets nervous?
No, I don't view it as nerves. I think I get an elevated heart rate before I go on stage, and I get a certain, you know, sort of change in my physicality and my mental state, and I just view that as like that's just my body getting me up to the position I need in to deliver the best performance. I think if you view those things as nerves, then they become unhelpful as opposed to being a positive thing. Like,
yeah,
I give quite kind of large, impassioned performances and things, and I need to be, you know, my brain and body need to kind of warm me up for that. So, so that's how I view that. So it's something I kind of look forward to as opposed to view. I wouldn't describe them as nerves.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I don't even know if you know or not, Garrett. Another part of what Smirk Experience does is that we go into companies and help them speak better. People that talk for like jobs and stuff like that. And sometimes at the start, people will say to me, can you coach me so that I can talk to 100 people without getting nervous? And I always say, what do you want that for? Because you're absolutely right. It's a physiological change that helps you perform better, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. And I would say I'm more comfortable talking in front of groups of people than I am on a one-on-one. So
that's interesting. Interesting. Has that always been the case?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just find it an easier situation than you know, like small talk, whatever.
Right.
So.
Right.
So yeah, no, I love it. I find it's so it's one of those things where people kind of go, oh, you know, I couldn't do that. But with the couldn't do that thing, I was talking to a guy once. He was a friend of my mother-in-law's, and we were talking over dinner, and he was a lorry driver, like, you know, the big jobs, the uh, um,
Yeah,
big
yeah.
like Eddie Stobart type things.
Yep.
And he was just talking to me all night, and he was going, you know, I couldn't do what you do, and I was like, I couldn't reverse an 18-wheeler around a corner. And he was like, yeah, but it's just practice. And I was like, well, it's the same with anything. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
inherently impressive about what I do in any way that's more impressive than what you do. Everybody just has their things that they're used to, or, you know, that their skill sets led them down into. But one thing is not better than the other. So that thing of like, I can't use Microsoft Excel, and I don't know how people can. So if someone said to me, like, you know, I couldn't stand in front of a room full of people and tell jokes. It's like, oh, I can't. It's like I couldn't function looking at numbers because I'm effectively number blind, and I find it the most stressful thing. So it's like everyone's doing something that somebody else couldn't do. So I
Yeah,
do find
right.
that essentially there's a certain confidence trick in stand-up, in that effectively what you're doing, it's just look at the card, look at the card, look at the card. That's kind of what the job is, and I love it, and I think it's fantastic and everything. But there's a point with it where the revered status that it can have, I don't think it necessarily deserves.
Yeah, yeah. I do know what you mean. When you talk about look at the card, you're talking about misdirection.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about that for people that might not be familiar with it?
Well, you're using a linguistic toolkit to guide people down a path that you want them guided down. So, you know, it is essentially a card trick, or a cup and ball trick, where you know which cup the ball is under, but you don't want the audience to know because you're leading them down the path. And you're not using cards and you're not using cups and things, but you're using language to do the same thing. So the entire illusion that you're creating is it's a confidence trick. You're taking people down with you to a certain thing in order to elicit a singular response from them.
Yeah, understood. Understood. What elements of stagecraft, Garrett, do you focus on before you start? You mentioned quite a kind of aggressive, in your face type style. I've seen
Yeah.
you do gigs where you're holding the microphone approximately where your belly button is, because your volume is
Not for
such.
not for the whole thing, but yeah, I can project in a room, so I don't necessarily need a microphone. But a microphone is one of the instruments that we play, and I do play with it. So if I'm doing certain bits, I will use it as a tool in a certain regard. I don't need it necessarily in all environments as a tool for amplification. So if it's not necessary for amplification, I will use the instrument in a different way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What other things would you see? So much of this is kind of subconscious that you
Hmm.
don't even consciously think about, which is what makes these questions hard,
Yeah.
for you to answer,
Mm.
which I totally understand.
No, I mean the mic thing's not subconscious at all. If I went at full volume, which if I wanted to express myself at full volume, which sometimes I do, I don't want to perforate anyone's eardrum. So I do have to say to sometimes you get overly enthusiastic technicians, and I have to say to them, don't ride a fader. Like set the fader where it is, and I will ride the fader. But when I do that, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing it for a reason, and do not try and perform with me. I know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it. It's not a mistake. So sometimes you get people be like, "Oh, he's moved it away. I put it up." Like, don't do that.
Got it.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing with the tool that I'm using. So
And that obviously comes from years of experience doing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, uh, I've been on stage, like even not doing stand up. I've been on stage. I think I was sent to speech and drama classes when I was 3,
Oh,
because I was quite an unruly and precocious child, and my mum thought that that would be a good thing for me. So I've been doing drama for 40 years, and I've directed theatre and acted in things, and so I know, like, I'm quite comfortable with stagecraft. Like when I started, I didn't. I think from a writing point of view and a delivery point of view, I needed that time. But in terms of inherent ease of being on stage, that wasn't something, like, I kind of skipped that stage because it was just something I was quite familiar with.
yeah, right. I understand entirely. No,
Mm.
that's what's the strangest venue you've ever performed in?
Well, anything from I performed in somebody's back garden during COVID. I performed on a boat in the middle of a river in Cambodia. I've performed in the ballroom of an abandoned hotel to United Nations troops. It just at this stage, just loads of places, really.
Yeah, right. Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's and they've all worked in their own way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the garden gig was phenomenal. It was very. I got booked for it, and then I didn't know I didn't know it was someone's garden. So it was in between lockdowns when we were allowed to do certain things, and everybody was running out and doing gigs, and so I got booked for this thing, and and it was decent money, and I got there, and it was the address had been given, and it was a cul-de-sac in suburbia. So I called the promoter. I was like, "Is this someone's garden?" And he went, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." So when it was this really nice bloke who was a big fan of comedy and music and gigs and things, and he ran a company, and he just decided that he'd missed live gigs so much that he wanted to have a gig. So he invited all of his friends and everybody who worked at his company, and he'd set a bar up in his garden and had this barbecue smoker thing, and it was great. I mean, it was, and everything at that time was odd. So it was really nice, and there was something. It was great to get back to venues and things, but there was something really nice seeing a group of people, a group of colleagues and family and friends and things, socializing,
Yeah.
and being a part of that. It was really cool. And then I went to use the man's bathroom at one stage, and in his house he had lots of posters of music gigs he'd been to over the years, and comedy festivals and various things. He was clearly, a fan. So I signed him a poster. I said, "Thanks for the most unique gig I've ever done," and I sent it I sent it to him for his collection, because I thought, he had a gig in his garden.
Yeah,
That's
brilliant.
probably the one and only time he's going to. He's not a gig promoter, so it's probably the one and only time he's going to promote a gig or give him a.
From what you've told me earlier on, when
Mm,
you're forced to go to parties that you don't really want to do,
yeah.
would you swap having to do small talk to tap a glass and do a 20-minute set to everyone in the room?
No, because and this is slightly odd given what I do for a living. I cannot abide drawing attention to myself or other people drawing attention to me outside of a very specific context.
Interesting.
So I would like, ideally, I'd like to be invisible at all points in my life, other than for 20 to 60 minutes a night. That would be great.
Yeah, right. You sometimes, I won't name her because she's quite a big star, but a friend of the family has like made it,
Yeah,
and I won't do that. I won't go in any further than that because people will start guessing who it is.
yeah,
And she now will go out with her daughter, and there'll be like strangers taking pictures of her and her
Oh,
kids.
yeah, sorry, just to clarify, my position is not because I have a burgeoning celebrity that's causing me difficulty at any particular time. I just like keeping myself to myself.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying though is there is a level of fame that you can reach that um, means that you give up on that. You can't just, I don't know, nip to the shop to buy
No.
a pint of milk without, it being a thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely don't
Do you
envy
know?
that.
Do you know Bruce Campbell, the actor who's in the Evil Dead films?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's written a couple of absolutely fantastic memoirs, really, really very funny. And he was basically saying because he's a B movie superstar, he was basically saying just accidentally I have the greatest fame that's known to man, which is basically I can go about my daily life and nobody bothers me, and then I'll go to like a convention center and like 10,000 people will be cheering my name, and I'll meet people afterwards and sign their VHS boxes, and people will literally cry that they've got to meet me, and then I get to leave and just go back to my life and it's completely normal.
Right.
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I
yeah.
I think he's probably one of the only people who's ever managed something like that. But yeah, no, my feelings about that aren't anything to do with being known, because I'm not. But no, I just generally. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't like parties. One of the things about stand-up that suits me very well is I get to spend a lot of time by myself. So I'm quite.
Okay.
And during lockdown, I remember people were like losing their minds at the beginning of it, not really knowing what to do. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was like, I don't really know what to do. And I was like, well, you just sort of do nothing. They're like, yeah, well, just by yourself. And I was like, I have spent a huge portion of my life just being self-sufficient in hotels in regional,
Yes.
travel lodges or premier inns or things in places where I don't know anyone or whatever, and just going around and being relatively comfortable with that. But I guess in that, I'm quite sort of schizophrenic like that. I need complete solitude and company in distinct chunks and at a percentage of each of them that I get to dictate.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned about being on the road, Ben. What's the weirdest thing, not at gigs, but has just happened to you kind of on the road by yourself?
I don't know. There are particularly. I mean, it's not weird, really. It's like Nando's and the cinema and whatever, like regional museum or whatever you come across. Like,
Okay.
yeah. My best friend lives up in the north, and whenever I'm playing up that way, we'll go on days out together. So we really like going on crap walking tours.
Yeah, right.
The worse, the better. We'll find we went to a private island once that had just had a pub on it. It's called Peel Island. Great, and you have to pay a fisherman to take you out there, and then you're stuck on this island that's got a ruined castle. I think the pretender to the throne of Henry VII, Perkin Warbeck, hold out there.
Oh.
I can't remember. There were two there, Perkin Warbeck and Lambert Simnel. I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, there's a ruined castle where he stayed, and there's this pub, and whoever the landlord of the pub is known as the King of Peel Island. So we got a fisherman to take us over there, and that was a fun day. We've been to all sorts of places, safari parks. We go to the space telescopes, just fields of cows. We'll find things to do with ourselves for the day.
Yeah, nice. You would have what a lot of people would consider to be a successful career, Garrett.
Yeah.
Can you remember any times where you thought of quitting?
Yeah, all the time.
Go on.
Everybody always thinks of. No, I think definitely lockdown. there was a feeling, and I know it's sort of a lot of people had this, where you, we weren't doing anything for a while, and there was the idea started to creep in. Maybe I could go and do something else. Like, well, and if I did something else, if you couldn't do this anymore, and I had to do something else, I think I'd be fine with that. And what would I do? And you start thinking about it. And I know a couple of other comics who had the same thought. And then the first gig back, I remember the first gig back was at Battersea Arts Centre in the courtyard outside, and everybody was 2 meters apart, and they were wearing masks and all of that sort of jazz. And I went out, and it wasn't just amazing to perform, like it was great. But then I watched comics as well that evening. I was in the corner of the courtyard, and I watched Sam Fletcher and John Kearns and Al Murray, and it was just magic. And I drove home that night, with the windows down, just drumming on my steering wheel, and I don't think I've ever felt that good. Certainly at that point in my life, I'd never felt that good about anything. And there was just pure magic. And then the thought there was, oh, I can't do anything else. Like I need this. I need this in a way that I'd forgotten in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Like this thing that I've dedicated my life to is the thing that brings, shape and meaning to my life, and I enjoy it and benefit from it in so many ways. But having it, because I'd never taken a break for that long. I don't think a lot of people hadn't. I think the longest break I'd had from stand-up at that point might have been a week. And
right.
Yeah, so you just go, oh, maybe I would be, you sort of get into this weird kind of Stockholm syndrome type thing. We go, maybe I would be fine if I did something else. And then got back to it, and it was nice because it put pay to that idea that I either wanted to or could do something else.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I get that. Gary, you mentioned earlier on about being the gig in Exeter and the first time that you tried your aggressive style.
Yeah.
How then versus how now were you analysing gigs? Did you tape them and play them back?
I did used to. Yeah, I had a little audio recorder, little USB one that I used to record gigs on, and then I'd listen to them when I was out walking the dog. I used to have a little notebook where I write down the set list of every single gig that I did. But in terms of analysing, yeah, I mean, I'd analyse all the time. I mean, I analyse all the time now, but I just have sort of a bigger data set in terms of what I'm doing. Like my my benchmarks for success were different when I started. Just trying to get through it, I think, get a laugh,
Yeah.
And that was very much a kind of get through it, and that was around the time when I just started doing club gigs, because I was aware of stand up and I'd done stand up and things at arts festivals. But as in sort of starting to get 20s and or as it was then 10s, middle spots and things at pro clubs on Friday and Saturday night, that was a completely different world.
Yeah, sure. People talk about the value of confidence when you're performing, and you are a confident act. What do you think the relationship is between confidence and authenticity?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it before. I mean, if you're confident, then it is authentic, and if you're not confident, then that's authentic too. So I guess they're independent. I think. I
think it's possible to be confident without it kind of being you, if you see what I mean. Without,
yeah, definitely.
So, and I know this is a hard question, and if you say you don't know, then say you don't know. But If you had to kind of rank them, where would you put them? Would you put them the same as each other? Would one be more important than the other?
Confidence and authenticity.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, authenticity is very important because an audience can smell, because we're just pack animals, you know, and people can uh, smell a lack of authenticity. But I think you have to be confident if in what you're saying. I definitely think you have to be confident in the reason for you standing on stage, whether or not that translates as I'm the most confident person in the room. That um, there has to be an assuredness into what you're saying to an audience and why you're saying it.
Hmm. Yeah. I guess a different way of asking a similar question would be what separates from someone who commands a room versus someone who talks at a room?
Well, look, there's a difference between something being good and something being effective, and there's I don't think that's a distinction that enough people make. You know, like
Go on.
if you look at, say, if you take a music analogy, like Radiohead are good, and an Elvis impersonator is effective. So those
Got
two
it.
those two things can get mixed up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I understand. Here's a question for you. Do
Mhm.
comedians have to be liked to be funny?
No, definitely not.
Is that something that you ever think about on like you're presumably just thinking, as you said, the binary thing, will it get a laugh, will it not get a laugh? Do
Yeah.
you ever think about likability or
Um,
unlikability?
I mean, unlikability is an entirely sort of different thing. I mean, likability and unlikability and being playful and being obnoxious and things, they're different tools that you can use for different things. But the overriding thing that you're looking for is to entertain people, not to befriend them.
Right.
And if befriending them is useful in your quest to entertain them, then that's valid. If the opposite is true, that is also valid.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I understand. I understand.
Okay.
If you ever get to a stage where you spot that an audience isn't going for a bit that you're talking about at the time,
Yeah.
do you have any mechanisms to stop panic ever enter in your head?
Um, well, it's not a panic situation, is it? You just do something else.
Well, it
So,
might not be for you.
yeah.
Other people would think, shit, they're not getting this.
Yeah.
This is
Well, then
bad.
panic's useful, isn't it? Because you shouldn't do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is.
It's not helpful in the moment, but it's definitely something you should reflect on. Depends what you said. I mean, I mean, years ago, I was uh, I was at a like an open mic show on a Wednesday night in Shoreditch, and this is the thing about audiences being self-policing entities. This guy just went and said something absolutely horrible, and then he went to sort of dig himself out of it and went, "We had a little bit of ironic, casual racism for you there." And somebody from one side of the room went, "Wasn't that ironic, mate?" And it hit him like a sniper shot. You could see it like physically hit him. And then someone from the other side of the room said, "Yeah, it wasn't that fucking casual either." And he was finished at that point. And he's sort of looking and going, "Well,
Mm.
that's good because you won't do that. You won't do that again."
Yeah.
Yeah, you just
Yes,
and
yes.
that's it was a good lesson. It was a good lesson to learn. Um,
Talking of lessons learned, can
mm.
you ever think this would be early on? Can you think of a gig that's gone badly and what it's taught you as a comic?
Yeah, I mean, when gigs go badly, they always teach you. They always teach you something. And the thing I said earlier, you come away and go, "That was, almost certainly your fault." Um, I think one of the main things about a bit of experience is it doesn't matter. Like, the best way to put this. The first time I died on stage for an hour, it was like an emotional experience on the level of like a pet dying. It was just horrendous.
Yeah.
And yeah, I sort of did everything. I did everything wrong. So yeah, you move on from there. And I think you sort of get into a point where it's not an emotional response, and you learn to analyze it and learn to what you did wrong, what you should do differently next time. So you should sort of chalk them all up on the scoreboard and analyze your play, if you like. But it's not like at the end of the day, if you don't show up to work, no one dies. Infrastructure doesn't fall apart. The sky isn't gonna collapse, right? So there's something beautiful in that. There's a huge amount of freedom in that. You should be respectful of that. But if you die and it's like, oh, this is the worst thing, and you wake up the next morning and the sun still comes up, and you can move on, and there's another gig for you to go out and have a go at or whatever. So it's not. I think when you start, there's an idea in your head that it's dying on your ass is going to be the worst thing that ever happens, and it is bad. It's not good. Like you feel it in your soul, but then after that you rationalize it and you move on from it and you learn from it, and then it doesn't. You kind of see it for what it is, as opposed to being this. It happened and the world didn't end.
Yeah, right. I always say to groups when we're running these workshops, comics are good speakers for two reasons. One, they do it the whole time, so they have lots of practice.
Yeah.
But two, they've all died at gigs. And of course, you wake up the next day and it's not fantastic because you haven't achieved what you set out to do. But exactly as you said, you've still got friends, family, food in the fridge.
You can't win them all. You can't win them all. But the thing is, as you go on, it should happen less and less because you have a greater awareness of what you're doing and a bigger toolkit to deal with those situations. So it'll happen less and less. And sometimes it's 100% your fault, and sometimes it's 5% your fault.
Yeah.
And sometimes you didn't know. So I remember once going out and dying horribly, absolutely horribly. They stared at me with just venom from the moment that I went on stage, like complete silence for 20 minutes. And what happened was, I was on the way to this gig, and it was Jongleurs Bristol.
Lovely.
Yeah, and a bus had caught fire on the M4. And I was supposed to be opening the show, or I was in the middle, one of the other ones. But in this bus caught fire, so there was a delay. So I called ahead and said what the situation was, and the promoter was like, "That's fine, that you can close." So I was like, "Okay, I think I'll just make that," and I did just about make it. I mean, literally, like, threw the car on some double yellows, ran up the stage. And the MC, who I'd not met before, it was just a bit obnoxious with me, as if I had set fire to a bus on the M4 myself. And then I went out, and it was just a disaster. They just wouldn't laugh. Whatever I did, just absolute studied silence. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the hell happened there. And then I went back to the hotel, and one of the other acts said, "Oh, by the way, if you're wondering what happened there," and I was, the MC had decided, upon hearing that I was going to be late, they decided to because we not met before and we not worked together before, they decided to go out and say to the audience that during the middle section that the effing open spot hadn't showed up, and that because they couldn't be bothered to show up on time, so they were getting their headliner in the middle, and the show was going to be closed by an amateur who not done it before, and he just couldn't be asked to show up on time. And apparently the MC then came off, and the opening act said to them, like, there are no open spots on this show. And they were like, well, I've not worked with him before. And he was like, oh, well, you know, he's very good. He closes all the time. Like, why did you say that? And they just went, fuck it. So he was like, you were fucked. There was nothing that you could do at that point.
Right.
So sometimes it happens, and you haven't got all of the data, and you kind of, because it was a bit odd, and then you get the data, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I could have been better, but I think that was like 98% not my fault.
I would say so, mate. I would say so. My word, what a strange thing to do.
Not a very nice person, but you know, you get that.
Probably like didn't have enough mates when he was at school or something like that, and it's everyone's fault. And surely the MC just wants everyone to do what a good MC should.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to speculate. But...
No. Well, let's leave him there. Garrett, you obviously are
incredibly sexist that presume it was a man.
I did. It was kind of sexist in a positive way, in as much as I was assuming that a woman would be nicer than a man.
Okay.
I think you might have mentioned the comics gender at the start of your story.
No, I didn't. I kept it gender neutral.
Well, we are recording this, so I shall be sure to. The first thing I would do at the end of it, I might record more of my conversations with people. Anyhow, let's move on.
I think there are legal implications to that. But
I think there are. I think there are. Garrett, you're mainly interested in the comedy world, I know. But tell me, do you ever look at a speaker from outside of comedy and think, oh, that little thing reminds me of a comedy set? There is a part of my toolkit as a comic he or she has used in addressing a different room of people. Do you ever get that?
No. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example. I was watching some lectures by paleontologists this weekend, but I didn't go, oh, they're doing...
that was a callback.
Yeah, they were doing stand-up. Well, I guess, you know, all forms of public speaking have they're all related to one another, just like all forms of storytelling are related to one another. But no, I don't. I don't look at things like that. I think generally.
No, I understand. Do you ever listen to speakers and critique them? If I asked you what the biggest mistake that you see people make.
Actually, yes. I can give you an example of this. I don't know whether I should, but I can. So I went to, this is a while ago, I went to church with my mum. She took me along to Mass. I think it was Easter or something. And there are a number of different priests at this church. And if you get a good sermon, if you get a priest who's very good at public speaking, it can be incredibly interesting. Like, there's one of these priests who keeps animals, and so all of his stuff is about tying everything down to like the behavior of particular types of animals, and it's fascinating. So, you know, you can really get something out of it. Going, oh yeah, that's nice. So it's taking all this sort of codified philosophy and then putting it into his direct experience with looking after animals, and I find that really endearing and interesting. And then there's another priest there who is an atrocious public speaker, an absolutely atrocious public speaker, but is under the impression that he's good. His cadence is wrong, the emphasis he puts on things are wrong, he pauses for effect in all the wrong places, and the overall effect of his speech pattern is incredibly alienating. It's very, very difficult to engage with anything that he's saying. And I would say exactly the same with politicians at the moment. I just watched, just before we came on here, I just watched Keir Starmer's resignation speech.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have been, it was an opportunity to have a good speech. But I think the problem with him and with so many politicians now, the way they speak is entirely alienating. And the words they use and the repetition of the words they use turn everything they say into white noise. So I don't know, I could count it up. But in that speech, as with a lot of the speeches that he has delivered, that I think that his successors will deliver and his opponents deliver, you just hear change, 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 because they use the word so much, so it just becomes... If it literally said to every politician in Westminster, for the next 12 months, you have to write a speech without the word change, I think they would get through to a lot more people. Not that change is a bad concept, not that they shouldn't wish to communicate that, but it's gone on too long, and it's just an appalling way of speaking to people. And I guess at some stage along the line, someone would have said, oh, you need to repeat the message and repeat the message. Well, now we're at a point where every political speech is basically the safety demonstration on a 747 that nobody's paying attention to because you're so overly familiar with it, and the words are quite boring, and it's not inspirational, and it's not doing what they want it to do. It's just alienating, and it's bad. And I think that's probably one of his... everybody since Blair has been trying to, copy Blair's ability to do speech. And that was Blair. That was his style. So every politician since Blair has been like an open micer ripping off James Acaster or Stuart Lee or whatever. And it's droning and it's boring. And so you just get to a thing where there aren't engaging political speeches anymore. And I just thought, watching that resignation speech, I was like, I'm so sick of this vocal pattern. And it's not like, oh, great, we're going to get another prime minister, because, it might be Andy Burnham. His acceptance speech for Makerfield, exactly the same garbage, just talking in meaningless garbage sound bites that have been repeated so much and have the same words and everything. So the intonation in of itself becomes uniquely alienating. And I don't think a slight change in accent or making your voice less nasal or whatever is going to change that. There we go, change. It's going to affect that situation in a meaningful way. So yes, politicians generally now, in the age of 2026, absolutely awful public speakers, because they've been encouraged to emphasise all of the same things. And they've also been encouraged to... remove the idiosyncrasies from their own speech patterns, which is death.
Like what?
Everybody has a unique way of speaking, and if you start to analyse them, you'll have inflections and vocal tics and things that are kind of uniquely your own. And if you roll those out of your speech, then you are going to be accused of being robotic. So things need form and they need texture. And people have largely looked to remove that from forms of public speaking. There's a really interesting one with John F. Kennedy and Winston Churchill. John F. Kennedy learnt to speak when his father was the U.S. ambassador to England, and he learnt public speaking from watching Churchill in the viewing gallery of the House of Commons. And Churchill had a very unique way of delivering speeches. And his repetition and his intonation and stuff, incredibly engaging, incredibly powerful, and unique to him. And if you then look at John F. Kennedy's speeches, very different accent, slightly different messaging, but has a lot of the same style as Churchill. Is really very effective, but kind of took it and made it his own. But if you look at we shall fight them on the beaches, we shall fight them on the land and craft, which is exactly the same as we choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. It's the same. You can see the influence on the two, but yeah, Blair was a goddamn rock star when he was giving a speech, and now you're just going, the tape has been copied so many times that it just is ineffective, and there's been no adaptation in it.
Let's take that a little bit further. We were talking about different jobs earlier on. Let's pretend a world where Downing Street sees this podcast and says, Garrett Millerick, name your price, stop us in the mistakes we're making. What types of tips from comedy could good politicians learn?
None, because, I actually think the relationship between comedy and politics has become, like, if I had my way, there would be no comedians on Question Time. I think there's this crossover that's happened, which is not good, where you have comedians attempting to be politicians.
Yep.
Where they're coming out and they are delivering essentially speeches, funny speeches, but they are genuinely trying to get you to vote in a particular way or to do what they want, which is not what anyone's paid for. That's not what this is for. And then similarly, you have politicians trying to be funny. There should be a complete separation between church and state. No one should go into a comedy club and have to listen to somebody tell them how to vote. And it's incredibly partisan. I don't want to know the comedian's personal politics. Because, I mean, one of the fantastic things about SNL when it came on in the UK, I think it was the first television programme that recognised the fact that Keir Starmer was the Prime Minister and not Nigel Farage. It actually took Americans coming in to do political observation.
I didn't
get that over the line.
I didn't mean my question quite as blatant as comics doing political speeches or politicians.
I don't think we should
trying to be funny.
I understood the question. I just don't think there should be any crossover. So I would have any. You're talking about public speaking. It's not that complicated. Just it's I guess the difference you were talking about, confidence and authenticity. Because you could analyse what those two things are, and being authentic is something that just doesn't. I mean, look, whatever you want to say about Trump, you go, it's an enormous success story. Aside from all the effect, but like from an electoral point of view,
correct.
And you go, that's just raw authenticity and confidence just going in with not a lot else.
Correct.
Not a lot else going in there. So rather than taking the lesson of that and just go, look, show us who you are, and if good people were willing to show you who they are, then something might you might get something more interesting. But it's essentially, like, who cares? Whoever's going to take over the country, they're just a bunch of morally vacuous estate agents. I don't care like what party they are. They're 3-star people who have absolutely no interest in being honest with anyone or showing who they are. Just talking in pointless aphorisms in circles. I reserve the right to mock that, but I have no interest in supporting either side of it.
Garrett, on that cheering note, I think it's a good time for us to close.
Okay.
Mate, that's been a fascinating discussion that
Hmm.
I have really enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed giving some of your answers as well.
Yeah, it certainly forced me to think about some stuff that I had not considered. I don't know. Like I'm one of those people. I guess it's kind of how I was raised. I don't like over analyzing myself particularly. So I don't do it a lot. And I'm not, again, oddly for a comedian, I'm not overwhelmingly confident. Not confident. Comfortable talking about myself in academic terms. So it takes a while to go.
Quite a lot of this podcast is like stirring up the sediment from the bottom of the beaker that people, possibly for a reason, haven't stirred up for a while. So thank you in going through that. Garrett, tell us about the show you're working on. Would that be for Edinburgh this summer?
It is for Edinburgh this summer and beyond. It's called "We Tried It Your Way." It is it's an interesting experiment. I've never used an AI ever, and people have tried to get me to use them, and I have resisted. And at the beginning of this year, I read an article about like closed system things being used for particular jobs, and I was speaking to the CEO of an AI company, and I asked if it would be possible for them to build an AI of me, and train it on every piece of recorded stand-up I've got from a 15-year career, and see if it could perform stand-up comedy with the knowledge of my comedy voice. And they said, well, we don't know because no one's ever tried to do that before. And I said, yeah, well, why would you? Any reason to do it is just basically for a laugh. So they came back a couple of months later and said, yeah, we reckon we can do this. So I'm going to be performing on stage with an artificial version of me, which the audience are going to be able to suggest routines and things. So we're going to test what's better, if a human being or a computer is better, and that'll be the first time I've used an AI.
Oh my God, you might be the act that's responsible for the whole jig being up. What if the AI wins the festival prize and you are remembered as the comic that has unleashed it?
I'll take that. Yeah.
Garrett, how can people find out more about the show and buy tickets? Do you have a website, social medias? Give us a couple of handles.
You can find me at Millerick Comedy on Instagram and Twitter, and tickets are available from the Pleasance website. It's at the Pleasance Courtyard at 4:30 in the afternoon. It's quite early in the afternoon to be facing people with the impending apocalypse, but I've got a kid now, so I need to get back.
If anyone can do it, Garrett, you can. I'm actually up at Edinburgh this summer, so I'll drop you a line. I'll try and come along to the show because that is a subject that I'm fascinated in, and I know you're doing a smoke show on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to seeing you there for that. But for now, thank you so much for your time, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Cheers.
There he goes, the brilliant Mr. Well, there he was, the brilliant Mr. Garrett Millerick. I think there was loads to get your teeth into there, but as ever, here are 3 takeaways from me. Firstly, a shared understanding is crucial. Whether it's a comedy set or a business speech, people respond if they're on the same page at the start. Secondly, authenticity beats performance every day of the week. Audiences don't want perfection. What they want is honesty. They'll connect with someone who's being themselves instead of playing a role. And lastly, performances give you feedback, not judgment. If something doesn't land, don't panic. No one's died. analyze it, and improve for next time. Thanks for listening to Before, During, After, a Smirk Experience podcast about performance from the inside. If you've enjoyed it, why not share it with someone else who you think might get it? And give us a follow while you're at it. See you next time.